One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. And we are continuing our martial arts mayhem month, and we are going back in time to a legendary film. But we have a special host for you today. Why don't you take it from here, Brandon? Tell us a little bit about the film that we are to be discussing.
I am proud to say that with the end of martial arts mayhem, we are finally including our very first Bruce Lee film, even though it is not his first film. Enter the Dragon, the 1973 film directed by Robert Clouse, and an amazing film. His first real big Hollywood film, which was to be the start of many. Unfortunately, that life was cut too short. But this is a film that has some potential spoilers. If some of you have not seen this film, it has been out for at least a couple of months. So hopefully you have at least have heard of this film, especially if you're a martial arts fan. But there are spoilers in this discussion, so watch the film first and then come back to us, because you'll enjoy it more, I think, that way. So with that, I'm going to go quickly through the basic plot. There's this, he's basically playing a secret agent going to see about this big drug bust on an island where there's a martial arts tournament. That's probably the best and quickest way to look through it, and we'll get more into the plot later. But first, we want those first impressions. So let's start with, you, Forrest, because you were the one who recommended it to us. So
right,
I'm going to guess this wasn't your first time watching the film.
Absolutely not. I was about I want to say I was maybe 12 or 13 the first time I saw it. At that point, Bruce Lee, so my avatar is of Bruce Lee as Kato from the Green Hornet, and that was my first exposure. That was my earliest exposure to Bruce Lee was the Green Hornet, and then later on, later on, I remember catching Enter the Dragon on television when I was 12 or 13. And I just loved, it was love at first sight. Just the great, I love the martial arts choreography was great. The music, the cast. I had already seen Nightmare on Elm Street by then, so John Saxon was so it was awesome seeing John Saxon in something other than a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It was great seeing him in that. Jim Kelly, also my first exposure to Jim Kelly, who was one of the big names in blaxploitation cinema. It's just great. Did I mention the music by Lilo Schifrin? Schifrin, yes. But yeah, and also had very high. Also, it also had very. I love it has great production value.
We'll definitely get to all those in due time.
Yeah, it's got a very Hong Kong. I mean, on one hand, it's very much a Hong Kong martial arts movie, but at the same time, it's got a very Hong Kong sensibility, but with Hollywood production value.
Very much so. Very much. All right. So next, why don't we go with Dave? Is this your first time seeing Enter the Dragon?
No, it is actually probably my third time watching it, to be honest. The first time was when I was living with a roommate of mine. His name was Bruce. And unfortunately, I'm not associated with him anymore. But that being said, he introduced me to it as it was kind of his namesake. And I really enjoyed it at the time, and then I watched it with my fiance, Tammy. She's not really into the martial arts scene, mainly because some of her exes kind of bored her to tears with some of them. My take on this is like this was the original Mortal Kombat.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I have always been a fan of these tournament-like martial arts things. I mean, I'm also a fan of like the Master of the Flying Guillotine, the one-arm boxer, things of that nature. Whenever you think of martial arts in any sense of the word, especially in the modern world, you think of Bruce Lee.
Yep.
And Bruce Lee, he had his own martial arts school. He had his own techniques to bring to the table, and just seeing him on screen, and the fact that you do get a cameo of Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
Here.
Can you miss it?
Actually, in multiple movies of Bruce Lee, actually.
Well, yeah,
the first one.
And this director is this is not is going to be his first. This is probably his first time working with Jackie Chan, but I guess afterwards he actually worked with him on another film later on, just like he worked with Jim Kelly on another film. And I'm glad that you mentioned Jim Kelly and the blaxploitation reign of things. I mean, Jim Kelly was the first blaxploitation actor that I would consider that modeled the fro. So to me, it's like once you saw him on screen, then everybody had to have the fro so that you could have the pick and the hair. So, but in any case, each of them brought different martial arts styles to the table, and I like that it was kind of an espionage kind of film too.
Yeah,
in the whole thing, kind of a James Bond-ish moment for before. Probably this was probably before or after his Green Hornet moment.
This was after.
Way after.
This was way after.
Okay, so
this was at the end of his career.
This is a well completed movie.
Yeah, he actually did not live to see this movie. One could say that Game of Death but Game of Death technically was being worked on prior to this and never got finished afterwards. So, Jake, is this your first time seeing Enter the Dragon?
It is not. It is the first time in a good while. One of my brothers went through a Bruce Lee phase where he was very much a Bruce Lee fan, read the books, watched all the movies, whatever. And I couldn't get into him at the time, honestly, but I know that I did watch at least this one and the one known in this country as Return of the Dragon.
Oh, yeah, my favorite.
I know I also saw Game of Death, and I probably saw Fists of Fury. Or the one that we call Fists of Fury. I mean, I don't know that I ever saw the first one, but I could be wrong on that. Again, at the time, I didn't really get into them. I feel like I've seen this one and or Return of the Dragon at least once since then, but it's been a minute. But of course, when we learned that Criterion was doing a great big Bruce Lee package, I had to get that. And this was really, I've been sitting on it. I haven't really fully cracked into it yet, but I watched this and most of the bonus features they packaged for this, a couple of the more general ones. And I have not watched the alternate cut that I know of, unless that was the one I saw earlier.
The one I put up was the longer cut, the extended cut. But
I saw the main one that they include on the collection, not the alternate one.
That's what I watched too.
What's that?
I said that's what I was watching too.
Right. But my overall impression this time around was considerably more positive. I didn't dislike it before, but I just didn't remember it well. I kept thinking this was the one with Chuck Norris, and I couldn't, Yeah, and I believe that was like his first screen credit, wasn't it?
I
Like,
believe so.
yeah, this was one of Jackie Chan's first, and I actually read that. Was that?
And one of Sammo Hung's first too.
Yes, yes, and Sammo Hung is actually featured at the start. You get a much better feel for him. But overall, I enjoyed it. I had totally forgotten it was a spy film. It basically is Bruce Lee as Bond in a lot of ways. Han is very much a Bond villain, and I liked it a lot when I looked at it that way. Like it was very fun watching it that way. And I thoroughly enjoyed it this time, and I'm hoping I'll get a chance this week to watch the alternate cut, partly just so I can revisit it. But
and this was not Jackie Chan's first appearance in a film with Bruce Lee, because he was actually in as a stuntman, but yeah, he was still in pretty much most of them, because Bruce liked to bring people with him that he trust to do good stunts, and Jackie Chan was one of those. He was even in the very first film with him in Fist of Fury or The Big Boss, depending on the confusing nomenclature that the United States decided to make and make us all confused about the films.
One thing I did read about this that I very much enjoyed, and I'll go ahead and throw it out there, is that apparently Bruce Lee did at one point accidentally hit him upside the head with a stick. And he promised him, "You will be in all my films." But unfortunately, he never got a chance to do that, you know?
Well, I mean, he's got a little bit of it, just not major roles.
Right.
So let's, I forgot. I should give my first impression. So for me, Bruce Lee, this wasn't a very important film. Or actually, I should say, because this is the first Bruce Lee film that we covered, I really wanted to host this time because of how much this particular stuff has meant to my father and me growing up. My father actually trained under Fred Wren, who was a Bruce Lee student over in St. Louis. And he had a great admiration for Bruce Lee, so much so that I was inundated with Bruce Lee stuff from the time I was an infant. The first time, I mean, his books, his philosophy, I got to read his books. I was kind of strongly encouraged to. I didn't learn much of the whole martial arts thing because my father didn't really have the, I didn't have the concentration either. So he didn't have the concentration to teach. I didn't have the concentration to learn. But as far as that, I've gotten to absorb a lot of that. I've seen most of the films from the time that they were, put out on video cassette, and back when they were super expensive to find. It's just one of those things. So it means a lot to me to see one of these go up, because it's a big part of my childhood. This one was one of the biggest budget ones that I had seen. And I was saving the extended cut for this discussion, because I've seen Enter the Dragon so many times. It is just, it just means a lot to me, and just seeing the different fight choreography. There was no one like Bruce Lee. The Raid was more similar to what martial art movies were like prior to Bruce Lee entering the scene, where you had a lot of extended fights with almost everybody, and it was more of a dance than it was a there. So he brought more of a quickness or brutality to it. Well, there was brutality in the Raid.
I was going to say, I'm not sure.
It wasn't, but he didn't also spend like 3 or 4 minutes on every move that he fought either. It was usually very quick until he got to the end.
Well, and I swear to God that the Lion King, Grafiki, some of his fighting stances from this particular film.
So one of the things I'm going to do with this is I'm gonna try this. I've been doing this studiously and doing my homework and writing and doing notes. So I'm going to try and incorporate characters and plot as we go.
Okay.
Because I've got everything outlined. And I'll go ahead and get us started with this plot. With our initial setup, where you get to see Bruce on his island. And you even get to see him do some practice fights with the students he's training on and the temple. And that famous thing where he's talking about, don't think, feel, these type of things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I wanted to also put in, when I can, if I see something that was in the extended that wasn't in, I'll throw that out since no one else had watched it here. One of the scenes that they'd used for Game of Death 2, for those of you who were fortunate enough to see that little piece, one of those scenes was had been recycled from this, that was cut, which was the scene where he was talking with his former master, and they had actually talked about Han as a former student of his master.
Mm-hmm.
And that was and that actually introduced a little bit more about that, about his sister being killed by Han's order, by one of his right-hand man, O'Hara, which you get to see at the end of that towards the character thing. So and of course you get the setup of, the whole, here is your mission, Mr. Bond, if you choose to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying that's a difference between the two?
Yes, because you didn't see the walk with the old man with the beard where he's talking about.
No, I did. I did see that sequence.
So maybe you were watching the extended cut instead.
Maybe. I watched the one when you take disc 4 out of the collection and pop it in. That's the one I watched.
That's strange, because it wasn't in the original theatrical cut that I watched, with him talking to his master at the beginning.
Isn't the theatrical cut the bonus one?
I can tell you.
I could have sworn the theatrical cut was the bonus cut. And
Go ahead, Dave.
I don't know.
I can tell you that it was in mine.
Okay. So, any case, they also recycled that for Game of Death 2. So, any case, with that, what did y'all think of that whole setup? Because you were setting up Lee. That's kind of funny that his character's name was Lee.
Yeah.
And basically his whole conversation with Mr. Braithwaite and his setup of everything.
Right.
There's a lot in there, so feel free to throw it out, because you got that, the student thing, all of that.
It was good. You got to see that first fight with Sammo Hung, gives you a little bit of nice introductory, martial art there. The little part with the student. It is worth noting that was the scene that was that we mentioned in our Ninja Turtles discussion, that where the guy bowed and
never lower your eyes.
Never remove your eyes from your opponent. But Bruce Lee did not beat the crap out of the kid for that. He just kind of smacked him a bit.
That was kind of to his philosophy, because it was all about making the most effective fighting style, pulling everything from it.
Never lower your eyes, even when you're bowing, or something like that.
Yes.
Never lower your eyes to your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I know we would talk about that as being a dishonorable trait. But again, I think that entire first thing I thought was just a setup to Bruce's philosophy. I mean, really, combat philosophy. What did y'all think about that? Do y'all agree with that?
Yeah. I was... sorry.
I mean, I know, Forrest, you're fairly familiar. You're pretty darn familiar with Bruce Lee too. Would you say that was a pretty accurate depiction of, or at least a slight introduction to his philosophy?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And what did y'all think of the setup of our plot line with Mr. Han when it comes to the Well, his mission being given to him by our Mr. Braithwaite.
Well, it was a very Bondish
Yep.
moment. Like you get this very British guy giving him this mission, the old school footage and all that kind of stuff. And yeah. And then I kind of like the little moment where apparently Bruce Lee asked the producers he wanted to use a gun because he just thought it would be fun to do that. And then they actually wrote it into the script, no guns. And supposedly that was like his genuine disappointment.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, he had said that no martial arts fist can stop a bullet, so he was like, "Yeah, just get a Bond gun and this pow is."
Right, but yeah, that whole sequence was pretty fun. Yeah,
and I believe that was his real voice. It's one of the few times that he was actually voiced by himself.
Yes.
It's funny though, he's had voice acting roles in many of his previous movies, but almost always they were given to other people.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was hilarious. I learned about that.
Yeah.
So we do get our character introductions in the next section of the movie, where we do have the whole flashback to his sister, and we meet O'Hara at that time, where she is. She's doing her darndest to fight, but he ends up overpowering. So what did you think of the bodyguard O'Hara?
He's a jerk.
Because that was one of the two main guards that you're introduced to related to Han. He's the white dude.
Yeah. He is that. Yeah.
I don't know. You get a flashback scene once Bruce Lee hits Hong Kong, and he's told about his sister, and so I guess in Bruce's mind, he sees the whole shenanigan of his sister being basically hunted down, and she ends up like. Committing the Chinese suicide.
She didn't want to be caught by these guys.
Yeah.
Because she knew what was going to wait for her when she got to that island, and we find out what happens to the girls who get taken into that island. And we're also introduced to our other characters as we get ready to go from Hong Kong to the boat ride.
It should be said that she does kick a fair bit of ass before she.
Oh yeah, I thought it was a very tight and well choreographed fight sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do like the moment on the boat where we have that other fighter, and he was asking into Bruce Lee's style of fight, and he was like, "Well, I like to call it the art of fighting without fighting." And so he's like, "Well, do you think we should do it here?" And dude's like, "No." And so, how about that island over there? Why don't we take this boat and go out there? And he's like, oh, "Okay." So he gets on the boat. He starts tying the rope, and he's like, "Hey! What are you doing?"
I like that. That was fun.
And he doesn't last very long once he gets into the tournament either.
No.
So they also had, and they also introduced, of course, our token white guy, who they wanted to make sure they had a white guy there because they weren't certain that a
Western
audience would accept an Asian lead. And so that's Roper. And I found him amusing because he really wasn't, he wasn't the main character, but he was kind of just there to be kind of that guy there. He's a gambler. He's in a lot of debt. He's a martial artist.
He's kind of the Felix Leiter to Bruce Lee's Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually.
He was
And
weird, big and mean, and showed that he had some talent.
we covered like Big Trouble in Little China a while back, and in a way, it kind of reminds me of that. I'm playing not quite the comic relief, but still, he kind of played that kind of character that seemed like he was the lead character, but in reality, he wasn't.
Right. Well, and I did find it kind of sad and kind of amusing that supposedly John Saxon was not told that he wasn't really the star of the film, so he showed up thinking he was. But yeah, I thought it also is kind of cool. I love it when we do callbacks to our other ones. Yeah. And of course, he was notable as one of the few big name actors who survived from Dusk Till Dawn, even though he's technically in it for 2 minutes. But
and Jim Kelly wasn't entirely the first choice actor that they were supposedly supposed to have. In fact, he dropped out last minute, and they were like, "Well, who do they put in?" And I guess through some actors agency, they were told of Jim Kelly, and he basically came in like on like the first day of shooting, and when he comes in on the airport, that's when they film him coming down, straight off the airplane, and that really really was him getting to the set.
Rodney Tarkington was the guy.
Now, and of course, we have Williams, who is our blaxploitation character here, which they wanted to bring also that. Again, they were looking at trying to market this to as many audiences as they could.
Oh, yeah.
And he was also brought in, and he was an amusing character as well. Williams was. I mean, he played that blaxploitation kind of guy. Unfortunately, it wasn't his movie. But darned if he didn't play it. I mean, these three characters really, all of them were the star of the movie, but there was only really one star at the end.
Yeah.
So what do y'all think of Williams? I know y'all touched on him a little bit earlier.
Well, like you said, he was fun. He kind of had that little bit of the. I think this film came out 2 years after Shaft, and I think they were
2 years after Shaft,
kind of looking for that sort of vibe, probably with that character, and so if James Bond and Felix Leiter teamed up with Shaft, then
oh yeah, it was a great. It was great. It's too bad he did not last as long as he should.
Yeah, that was kind of disappointing. I would have wanted to see him fight a little bit longer
because he was really good. Actually, all of them were pretty well skilled.
Yeah.
But they wanted martial artists.
Saxon got casted because he was a black belt. Same with Kelly.
Yeah. They were both, actually, I think Kelly didn't. The producers, I think you said an actors agency, but I think I read that he was spotted actually at a martial arts tournament, like someone had recommended him.
Documentary Blood and Steel, if anyone watched it, they actually said it was through an acting agency. So that's where I got my information.
Right. They had some info that was a little different than others. But when you get people's recollections,
I do like that for refreshments.
Yeah.
After the initial party, each character is given the choice of a bevy of females.
Oh, we're definitely getting to that as we go. Matter of fact, let's talk about the first day when they arrive. But hold that thought, Dave. I will definitely make sure you're the first up.
Did you mention? As they all come into the harbor, like they've all got their flashbacks, and you get a little bit of nice social justice commentary with Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the thing with the police there, which was kind of a weird callback to today's politics.
Right.
And I mean, really and truly, that boat ride was all about character introduction. That whole thing from Hong Kong to the ride over, that was about, these are the main characters. Here's their motivations. There you go. By the time they got to that island, you knew who all the heroes were.
Right.
And speaking of the island, when they get there, you're introduced to our main villain, Han, and our other two kind of leading ladies, Tanya and Mei Ling. And of course, the other right-hand man to Han, Bolo. Which they didn't really give a name, but that's who he's known. as as a callback to one of our previous films, Bloodsport.
Well, and I found it interesting because you're right. I don't know if they really made it clear what his name was in the film.
No.
But that was his character name. His actor name at the time was Yang Se, and he actually changed his name because of this movie.
Oh yeah. And well, why don't we talk? We'll get to all of these characters, and then we'll really dig into the plot with the first day. What did y'all think of Bolo in his? Did you feel like he imposed the same type of qualities he did in Bloodsport?
To a degree,
absolutely.
It's like I said, when that dude walks into a ring, watch out.
The only thing he didn't do was the City Bounce, which was something that I think he did in the Bloodsport film.
That's true. He needed to get that in there. That's like a cut bit of like film that's on the floor somewhere. Like a full minute of him doing that. Just that's what he did. He's like having his pectoral muscles move, like This is my chest dance.
Well, we know The Rock does it, and I know definitely Terry from America's Got Talent does it. So,
of course, we also have Tanya and Mei Ling, who are technically working for Han, and you get to see them as they make their various contacts throughout. But they are both of them are undercover and working for various peoples. And what did y'all think of them as characters?
Tanya and Mei Ling? Oh, I like Mei Ling. Tanya for different reasons, I suppose. Yeah.
Tanya was interesting because when it came, this is where that bevy of females comes in, because Tanya is like the cat house mama. That she is the one who provides the girls for the refreshments part of this tour. So the first one that she comes to is Jim Kelly, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna pick you. I'm gonna pick you. I'm gonna pick you, and whoever else I didn't pick, well, you know the reason why.
Gotta save my energy for the
And then of course she comes to Bruce Lee, and he picks none of them, and she's like, well, is there anyone else that you have in mind? And he's like, well, the owner of this, which is and she's like, well, I will make sure that I remember her. I will make sure that she is sent straight to you. And then
so we had a demonstration in the previous banquet scene of the skills of some of these girls.
Yep.
And that involved this one blowing this little projectile.
Yeah, throwing apples in.
Yep.
Not too unlike some original Star Trek episodes of women dancing and things like that.
Oh, they had like a big old party there with the sumo wrestlers. It was just basically your first night of festivities, essentially just getting on the island, getting introductions. And you've got essentially all of that going on, and you have the introductions to these, but you also have the introduction to our Bond villain.
Well, that whole party sequence was like the Chinese version of Tortuga.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is him showing his what does they say? He's showing his gratitude, as they like to over and over again touch it on Fistful of Yen, which I'll touch on that at the very end for those who did get to watch that. You'll have
and
our gratitude.
Before we even get to the island, during that slideshow, I think some of the victims were actually supposedly mauled by animals, which apparently plays a part with Han, whose alter ego is Captain Hook.
And he was then they found him washed up on the shore too.
He's got more going on there than just a hook.
Yeah, they added a few attachments in Fistful of Yen. But
they do.
Yeah, it was yeah. So what do y'all think of Han as a character?
He does the part. I mean, like I said, he looks the part of a Bond villain. He acts like one. What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially the part where he's got his white cat and he's stroking the white cat.
Mr. Gadget kind of a moment.
Yeah, you mean Dr. Claw?
Yes,
Dr. Claw. There you go.
But I would say he was a better Dr. No than Dr. No was.
In a sense, yeah.
Oh, I thought he was an excellent villain. I mean, he would have fit extremely well in the Bond franchise. Bond would have had a hard time fighting him too.
They may have actually been thinking about that because, I mean, think about it. If Lee had lasted, they wanted him to do a franchise.
Yes.
From what I heard, that was how he got them to change the name, by agreeing to be in a franchise. They might have been thinking about, what if one day we have a crossover with Bond? I'm sure someone somewhere was thinking that.
Well, they wanted to do a sequel with these characters and make it into like a spy thriller, and he would have. After the success of this film, he wouldn't have needed the white guy to try and pull the numbers.
Right.
I think he would have been able to pull full billing, which would have been an excellent thing. So it was kind of cool to see that. Though we have our first night again, it's just a basic introduction, and then we finally get our first actual day of the tournament, and all of our artists get to show off their skills, including that guy that Dave was talking about that was kind of a dick and being on the boat. And then finally he has his chance to get revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it doesn't work out so well for him.
Not quite.
He gets beaten rather soundly really quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the real action in this one is at night, where two of our heroes decide that they need some fresh air. One literally just wants to get fresh air, and the other one is doing a little bit of night stalking and looking at the guards. That has a little scuffle with the guards, but they don't see who it is that's basically fooling them.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely some nighttime exploring going on.
Meanwhile, Roper is just like, yep, I'm enjoying myself.
Yes, he was. With Tanya.
Tanya was stepping on his back, giving him quite the foot massage.
Actually, I remember this now because Roper was in his first fight on the first day. And I don't know if you noticed that, like, he was versus that guy, and it looked like the guy was winning. And if you noticed, Williams was sitting there with Lee, and they was just like, he was silently motioning with the fingers, like, okay, I'm going to bet this much and this much. And then after it reached a certain amount, then he kicked his ass.
Well, you could see that they were running some kind of racket. Like the previous one, he had been betting with the guy behind him, and he tapped Williams to take over.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did find that kind of funny that it was like what I think happened, actually, it was the other way around. Like he was waiting for the bets to hit a certain point
Yeah.
before he would
Before he
start
turned it
winning.
around. Mhm.
Yeah. Like when the odds were in his favor, then he started winning. And
One thing I noticed about the following morning when they were supposedly supposed to do the morning training or exercising or whatever is that Bruce Lee was told by the token white dude to wear his uniform. And he shows up not in his uniform, and another guy is like, "Why are you not in your uniform?" And Bruce Lee is just gives him this like a fistful of dollars stare.
This is my uniform.
Yeah.
So, and that second day when we finally get to it, unfortunately, you've got a lot of stuff. Well, that's really the day where a lot of the plot starts moving. Because day 3 is where they do the finale, but that second day, you have the tournament. Han basically says, some of my guards failed me, and then he ends up having those guards executed, but they get to fight for their lives. So, if one of them's strong enough, they got to prove themselves. And that's how you start off. And Bolo gets involved really for the first time majorly as he's just tearing through these dudes.
Yeah.
And you get some extra payback. Bruce finally gets his revenge when he fights O'Hara, which is a nice little fight. And
yeah, very pleasant.
What did y'all think of that fight with O'Hara? It's a very interesting contrast to looking at some of the mid-boss fights in something like the Raid. Where you have like a lot of energy going on for a lot of time, but it's still there. Where this one seems to have that intensity, and it doesn't last that long when you actually look at it like that.
No.
Well, and this is also where you get that intense like a final drop kick on the stomach thing.
Oh, yeah.
And Bruce Lee, when he fights, he makes a lot of noise. A lot of noise. I mean, he's like.
Yeah. That was something that he developed for the films. From what I heard, he did not actually do that in real life.
I honestly, I felt honestly that this one was almost too short. Like not really in some ways, and in some ways it was perfect length, if that makes sense. Like it was kind of, O'Hara was built up to be this character you thought was going to be like a second ranked boss, not a mid boss. But then when he actually gets in the ring, he's really a mid boss. And it did give us that nice little cathartic moment of this douchebag killed his sister. So yeah, get him. And not only that, he was playing dirty. Like when he clearly lost, he breaks bottles and comes at Lee again. And it's like, yeah, I guess he had to be put down, but it was just such a...
because he acted dirty, of course, Han was like, well, yeah, he dishonored it. So he got what he got. He got what he deserved.
Right. Which I guess in a sense, it's nice that Han at least had a sense of fair play in the matches, if that makes sense. Not so much in real life, but a lot's been made of the reactions that Lee had. Like I mentioned in the Raid discussion, Gareth Evans made a comment on this exact moment of where there's almost anguish in Lee's face because he does not want to go that far, but it kind of happened.
His hand, yeah.
Well, he didn't want to kill, not really. And to me, that just shows his humanity.
Right.
We also end up getting Roper's death, Williams's death in this one, because Williams had gone out to get the fresh air. He didn't sneak out like Lee. And he didn't sneak out like Lee,
Right.
but Williams ended up going up there. And I loved how he says, "Man, you come from a comic book." When he's talking about the villain, because you get to actually get introduced to not only Han's fighting style, but you get to introduce to his special hand up close and how he uses it in battle. Because Williams makes short work of all of his good.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he invites him up and then basically accuses him of being the one who'd been sneaking around doing stuff. And yeah, it's what's up?
I was gonna say it was definitely a cool scene. What did the rest of y'all think of that fight when you really get to see Han fight for the first time?
That was wicked. I mean, you didn't entirely expect him to lash out like that, at least right away. I mean, this was just his way of toying with these people, and because he basically has found him out, he must be silenced. So
yeah. And I did like the scene overall, but it was a shame seeing Williams go so early. It really was. But it kind of helped set up everything that was going to happen next with Roper. That was kind of it served a purpose thematically. It just was a little disappointing.
Roper gets the full tour because Han decides to tap him as his potential business partner. And it's interesting because you get to see the drug operation, and you also get to see what he does with a lot of these women that he abducts, where he just drugs them until eventually they are no good and thrown into the sea, essentially. Yeah. So it's kind of a scary and nasty operation. I mean, he even has like people that he's been keeping captive and all of this. And he decides to put his cat in a guillotine, which that just tells me right there that he's a villain right there.
Well, yeah, that part was pretty interesting. But and also this part was a callback to earlier, because I think during the tournaments, Roper had made the comment that there was a line he wouldn't cross.
Yep.
And then during this tour, he eventually says the same thing again.
He says it again later.
But then then they showed him, what happened to his buddy, and he wasn't happy about that.
And of course, then you also had the last part of that day, which was Bruce's second outing. Which includes one of my favorite things, where he takes the cobra and he just tosses it into the booth. I believe I want to say somebody was bit by the cobra.
He got bit once, supposedly. Yeah. They had removed the venom, but still, getting bit by a full-size cobra ain't going to feel pleasant. No. But and actually, it's worth noting as well that he got injured in the O'Hara scene too. A mistimed bottle. Yep.
You can actually spot the cut, I think like a bandage or something that he was wearing because of that in later scenes.
Yeah.
But Bruce actually did not hold that against him, because he had basically said, "You need to come at me like you're going to kill me." That was the way he would do it, because he wanted to make the scenes. You're talking about the shortness of the scenes, but Bruce Lee wanted to make his choreography as realistic as possible. And in real martial arts, they don't go on forever versus each other. They don't get knocked. Their head doesn't get knocked into concrete. They fall down. They get back up. I'm ready to go another 10 rounds. It is fairly quick and brutal, and they made it that much. That's how he liked to make that. And there's tried to be as realistic as possible with a Hollywood flair to it. And he did a good job with that. I mean, you got to see the nunchaku scene with him wiping the floor with these people. And getting captured, of course, because of the knockout gas and Bond movie.
Yes, definitely.
And that's
Yeah.
why I like that moment in the underground ground where he's got the staff and, whatnot, because that specific part reminded me of Rafiki in The Lion King, especially with his whole, you know.
Well, actually, we'll get, you keep mentioning that particular scene, but that actually always reminded me of a particular moment in, I think it was Batman Returns, where Batman just like hit someone who's behind him, like in that same motion. But yeah, the sounds, I have no doubt Rafiki was partially based on Bruce Lee. I have no doubt.
Oh, I mean, yeah, he inspired so many people.
Right.
Most martial arts movies made after that time had at least some minimal inspiration from Bruce Lee, and those that didn't were probably inspired by films that were inspired by Bruce Lee.
Not to mention, we keep talking about all the movies we've covered this month that inspired aspects of Mortal Kombat, and of course, Liu Kang is heavily Bruce Lee inspired.
And this tournament very much a Mortal Kombat inspired. I mean, it's a whole plot line. They just, instead of changing it into a drug lord, turned it into a demon lord instead.
Right. And
Same
instead of someone who would prefer not to kill, you got so that's a little different.
So let's talk about the last day, unless anybody had anything else for the second day of the tournament.
No.
So last day of the tournament, we get our big finale. Bruce is taken up, and it's like, okay, Roper, you get your chance. Fight him, take him out, and we'll make you a full partner. He's like, screw you, line I can't cross. So then Bolo's sent up against him instead. And then as the fight goes in, we get a whole free-for-all with the prisoners being freed. And
prisoners get furried?
Yes, so they become furries and go up in their costumes, and then they fight. And then we've got, and of course, the final fight, which we'll cover at the end between Bruce and Han. But what did y'all think of that initial part beforehand with the free-for-all and, of course, the fight versus Bolo, which went on a little bit longer than the fight versus O'Hara? Not much.
A little bit.
Not much, but a little bit.
Well,
I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't entirely a long fight per se. At least I mean, I think that he had a better fight sequence film role in Bloodsport. To be honest.
Oh, yeah. Well, he didn't take that chalk in his hand to throw in Bruce's eyes.
Right.
Yeah. I actually really like Bolo. He's an excellent martial artist, and he is an amazing villain. He just has that face that makes you go, "Oh my God, this guy is evil."
It's kind of like if we're going to mix all our different movies from this month together. If you took Mad Dog and threw him in a bit of mutagen, he'd probably turn into Bolo. It's kind of, it was a pretty good fight sequence. The free for all was harder to follow along with, but you, from there, like you said, you get from there Bruce Lee and Han having their little encounter, and that got pretty intriguing. And then at the end, he comes back and he gives the big thumbs up, and and Roper sees him, and then they're all good, they're happy.
And then they have a wet T-shirt contest on the island. that was in the extended cut. You just didn't get.
Oh man, I need to see that.
But you get to the big fight.
Yeah,
where he is going against Han, and you talked about the fights being too short. This one actually was where he meant okay, now that you're at the boss, now we can extend it a little bit to show them
Mhm.
skill for skill. But they didn't do it because they were just upfront with each other. They made sure that they took rests, that they tried to use tactical things. You had that Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know one cut of the film, you don't have this. In the other cut of the film, you have him hearing back to his master talking about the mirrors right before he does that final blow. But you get to see him take that big old monster claw thing. They're two monster claw things.
I see that Marvel took note of his three-bladed thing for like Wolverine later on. Hey,
That might have been an influence on Wolverine. Wouldn't surprise me. That would make sense. But yeah, that one thing I want to say, I'm going to go ahead and skip a little bit on the practical aspects of the film. I was deeply impressed with the way that they were able to film that Hall of Mirrors without, the camera people showing up in the mirrors. I mean, that takes some doing. It is a little bit confusing to watch as a viewer, but on the other hand, that's part of the point. So it was an interesting sequence overall, definitely.
So Forrest, what did you think about the fight with him and Han?
The final fight between Lee and Han.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. I loved it. It was I'm sorry. Here, but with like Han switching out to switching out hands, and Lee pursuing him into the Hall of Mirrors. I just really like the Hall of Mirrors. I really like how that scene was shot. It looks so good. It just looks so good.
Mm-hmm.
And just a good tough fight to finish it off. Like Lee was not an easy. Han was not an easy opponent for Lee. Or at least not with that claw of his.
Oh yeah, that's. I mean, he had a weapon built right in.
Actually, that claw. I feel like the claw is like one of the most iconic movie weapons.
Right.
That's what makes him. I say that's what makes Han a good rival for almost any Bond villain. I mean, he's like not only is he like got his little gimmick, but he is just as skilled, probably more skilled and more deadly than most of the Bond villains, especially the lead villains, because the lead villains were more like, I'm going to sit back. So he was sort of like a combination between Blofeld and maybe I don't know, Oddjob or something like that.
A little bit. Blofeld, Dr. No, and I guess maybe Joe.
Well, one of the ones that's a gimmicky fighting style. You could pick one.
Actually, I just thought of this. I don't know if you guys have seen these videos, and I couldn't even tell you where to find them. And my brother had shown me these at some point. But there's a series of interviews, quote unquote, with people portraying characters from Street Fighter, and mostly it's forgettable. But there's one with Vega that they're talking about the claws and like you don't need the claws or whatever, and he's like, it's an integral part of my martial arts fighting style. And I was just thinking of that line. I was like,
well, then you end it with a pretty brutal kill where he is impaled on that spear and he is turning around that secret door that leads into the mirror maze. Just that rotating around. That is just to me, that is an amazing way that they can present the end of our like villain.
Right.
And of course it kind of wraps up very quickly after that. But let's go ahead and move on to our special effects. Now, Forrest, I know you had stuff that you wanted to say about that earlier on in your first impressions. I thought I'd come back to you on that.
on the
like special effects and just in general choreography, things like that. Because really, in this one,
Yeah.
choreography is just as important to special effect as the makeup and set design.
Absolutely. I'm not sure where else I can go with the choreography though.
Well, it is worth noting that this is a parallel again with the Raid. In that one, two of the lead actors choreographed the fight scenes. Of this one,
Yes.
I think they said in the script something like fighting scenes will be choreographed by Mr. Lee or
Yes.
something along those lines.
Yeah, he said that the only time Bruce
Right.
Lee was not the lead choreographer for the fights in his films
Mhm.
was the very first one, and it was partially done by him only because he was butting heads with the director.
Yes, I heard about that.
I think it's also the only one that you'll see Bruce using the trampoline jumps. No, but I mean, there were a lot of cool effects that you could see in this movie, from the different claws and attachments that the villain used, to the mirror scenes, to basically setting up the island. The island itself was a pretty amazing thing with the little bond layer beneath it.
Well, also the island itself, when you see it in profile, that was one thing I found intriguing. They couldn't find an island that they really thought was the island. So they composited it together from several different islands. And I'm like, given when this film was made, they did that pretty well, you know?
It was very well put together.
Yeah.
Well, what about
actually, a lot of this stuff was well done, given that it was a fairly low budget. You know, it was
$850,000.
Yeah.
What about music?
I love that the score was by the guy that did Mission Impossible.
Oh, you can feel it too.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, he's still doing stuff. He apparently has a movie in pre-production that he's writing the score for. Guys, let's see here. He was born in a long, long time ago. 1932. He's still writing music for movies.
Yep.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Some of the music was pretty iconic too. I mean, when I hear the music, I think of that film right away.
Right. Oh yeah, well, it's a great score. I loved it. I thought it was it had that sort of 70s vibe. Well, it was 70s right through and through, but it was like it was part blaxploitation, part James Bond, part Mission Impossible, all 70s.
And also with an Eastern flavor too.
A little bit of Eastern flavor, which I'm glad you reminded me, because I was about to forget that point. One thing that I found interesting, because I watched the bonus features for this and for the Raid, this one they specifically included the composer was not familiar with these instruments, but he found ways to use them to give it sort of an Eastern flavor. And it was the exact opposite with the American cut of the Raid. They said, okay, so no Asian instruments. That's not us. We're not. You know what I mean? So it's like they took the exact opposite route. So I thought that was
That's great. So, Dave, did you have anything to say on the music or the special effects?
I liked a lot of the halls of mirrors stuff. I mean, special effects wise, I think I did like that the makeup on the people that actually did get hurt did look real. As far as that goes, I did like that whole, like, the fact that everyone got down in that fight. The choreography in this film was just so radical. It was something to behold. You know, I mean, it is a capsule in time. so to speak. And I just liked the special effects all around. I mean, I guess the practical effect of the Cobra.
Yeah, that was very cool.
The Cobra, when he just smacked it on the back of the head and it became alive again. So
that was a real Cobra too, which kind of
I kind of hope he didn't. It kind of looked like he might have mistreated it just a little bit, but
he did get bit. He did get bit once.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, at least they defanged it beforehand. But
they didn't defang it; they took the venom glands.
Took the venom glands out. Yeah, so he was. So it probably hurt quite a bit.
Right, that's a big cobra.
So let's. So I'm gonna bring something else to the table. Now, this movie was probably one of the chief movies to bring martial arts into popularity in the United States. That wasn't blaxploitation. I mean, brought it fully into the mainstream. And it had a lot of parodies. It had a lot of films that were kind of dedicated to this. One of them that I was remembering, and I just caught it by accident, was Kentucky Fried Movie. Which is a parody movie in and of itself, but they had like a 30-minute stretch in the middle where they did a full-on Enter the Dragon parody called Fistful of Yen. Who here has seen that?
I have.
One day.
Oh, it is fun.
What about you, Forrest? Did you see that one?
Which one?
Fistful of Yen.
Yeah. Oh, well, from Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yes.
Yes, I have.
Now, watching this and watching that, you can tell that they were like, yes, we're taking this directly from. I mean, I'm sure that that Han, that they just cut the scenes with the dildo attachment and the and the flamethrower. So that flamethrower probably would have helped them a little bit more in the fight.
Kids love this one. I need to see that one of these days.
It really was kind of a fun thing, and it was really because when you do a parody like that, it is sort of an homage to the film and how great it was that people felt like it should have one because it was so well recognized. I mean, yeah, they even have the guy where they end up doing a parody of the whole concept of how brutal he is. He's like, he cuts the guy's head off with like with an attachment, like a blade attachment, then says, "Now take him away to be tortured." But
get your order wrong there.
They are a little bit hard on Detroit, though.
Yeah.
They pick on Detroit a couple of times.
Right.
With that being said, does anybody have any? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say before we wrap up, you kind of glanced at this, and I kind of let you finish your point before jumping in. But this was one of the first, as you said, but this was the first American Hong Kong co-production, I believe.
Yes.
It was basically the first American-produced martial arts, like Asian-style martial arts film. So it definitely was a first in certain key ways. And it did, yeah, you're right. It kind of led the vanguard in a lot of ways, is in addition to that. So fairly historical import.
At first, I mean, including Jim Kelly's first martial arts role, which led to others, you know.
Not his actual first role, even though it does say introduced.
I'm saying martial arts role.
Right. But they gave that introducing credit, which was a little off, but you know.
Well, as I was about to say earlier, additional items of note. I guess that would definitely have counted. Any other additional items of note?
I'm trying to remember if there were any others I came across. I think that's most of it.
There are a lot of nice Easter eggs. I mean, it really was. I count this as his last movie because Game of Death turned into something very different than was originally envisioned. And
Right.
I'm very sad that it did not come to fruition because it sounded like a really awesome. You thought that the Raid was video game like. That Game of Death would have been like.
You're talking about Game of Death 2, right?
No, Game of Death. The original Game of Death, the concept was that he was to climb this tower, and each floor of the tower would have a different martial artist. And until he reached the top, which they got some of those scenes in the original Game of Death at the end.
Okay.
With the real Bruce Lee.
I just saw something here that makes me wonder about something in the movie. Because you remember in the banquet scene, Bruce Lee kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, he kind of, it was either Bruce Lee or, well, Williams was actually talking about how he didn't care about the food. But I think Lee kind of wasn't feeling it either. But they say here, the feast scene took 3 days to film with the same food being used.
Oh, I definitely not care about it.
So I wonder if the later takes were the ones of them not wanting the food. I wonder. But I don't know. I didn't see anything. I just saw that bit of trivia and I was like, I wonder. But yeah, I can imagine some of that I would not want to go for after the first day or two.
I did feel sorry for Tanya when John Saxon's character, Mr. Roper, looked over and saw that she was dead. I think he did enjoy her company.
Oh yeah, that was one thing I don't know that I said earlier that I wanted to throw out there, which was that originally Roper was supposed to be the one that died early, and then Williams was going to team up with Lee, but Saxon's agent made a big stink, so they changed everything up because of his agent. I'm like, that was interesting. I'm sure there are some movies where that would have pretty much shuttered the production right there, but they were probably skittish enough about, they're probably like, okay, well, yeah, he's the one we're putting our money on anyway. So, yeah.
I think they would have, I think back then, having two people who are a minority leads finish out the movie together and killing off the white guy probably would have been too risky a role for Hollywood to take back in those days.
It would have played better with some audiences, but probably not.
Yeah.
So I guess, does anybody else have anything else before we move to favorite scenes?
Nope.
No.
All right. So what I'm going to do is have each of us do our favorite scene and then our outro as we go. So
Okay.
Jake, favorite scene and outro.
Okay. This one, well, is another one where I'm not sure that I have that many favorite scenes because I like a lot of them. It's kind of, there's a lot of good little moments here and there, but definitely the scene with the guillotine and the cat and everything. I found that kind of just the Bond villainy of that moment just amused me very, very much.
Yes.
And some of the fight sequences were very impressive, no doubt. The final fight, of course, with Han and Lee was nice. A lot of the moments with Williams, I just liked him as a character. He was a fun character. So, there were a few things. And then the scene at the beginning with the Shaolin Temple was nice, too. That whole scene of him teaching the boy. Those were all good moments.
Oh, what about you for it? Oh, sorry. Give your outro, Jake.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm used to doing them at the end. Okay. So I'm Kotobuki Jake, and I'm usually a little less spacey, only a little bit. I co-star on Septum Sin versus the World, where we discuss all kinds of fun stuff, and he can give you a little bit more detail here coming up, but I do want to definitely plug next week where we'll be talking about one of the great anime of all time, Kino no Tabi, aka Kino's Journey. And we'll be also talking a little bit about the remake, Kino's Journey, A Beautiful World. But the first show is a phenomenal classic. The second one is really cool. And the shorthand that I give people unfamiliar with the series is think sort of Gulliver's Travels, but a little more melancholy, and you've got the rough idea. I, of course, am a movie fan, collector, anime fan and collector, what have you, here in Central Virginia. I frequently guest as well on these lovely channels, Inside Movies Galore, Delusions of Grandeur, and we have lost Brandon, apparently. This is interesting. I guess I'll go ahead and pass the baton until he comes back. Forrest, why don't you go?
All right. Probably my favorite scene was the. Actually, I would say my favorite scene was the Hall of Mirrors.
Okay.
Actually, that was my favorite part of the whole movie. Just I like it was a bit that in itself was also a very Bond-esque moment.
Yeah.
Like and I'm Forrest Bennett, and I'm executive producer on the web series Toxic America, which is currently on Vimeo on demand.
Okay.
Awesome.
Oh,
we got Brandon back.
Yep. So, of course, I'm Septum Sen, a Septum Sen versus the world. But my favorite scene, of course, is the first one with the temple. I just love that. It goes through Bruce's combat philosophy and gives you some cool combat demonstrations. In general, it just as a great introduction. I really like it. I mean, I really feel like that gives you what you're going to get right away. As far as what I do, of course, we are a YouTube channel that focuses solely on Dog the Bounty Hunter. We collect and watch every episode, and we've analyzed every minute per episode. So now we're on minute 2,463. We're spending a whole 5-hour discussion on it. You'll enjoy
really
that.
all these martial arts films have made Brandon a little punch drunk.
But no, we do like our physical media here, and we love our collecting videos and new release news. But also, I work with Inside Movies Galore in order to try and bring you the best of the best movies for our discussions. And thanks to our generous viewers and, of course, all of our participants here on the crew, we have our December picks, which are holiday picks for the month. So I'm going to go ahead and go from backwards to next week. So at the end of the month, we're going to be wrapping up on the Christmas, around the Christmas season with Batman and Batman Returns.
It does make sense.
Then, of course, as we go back a week, we will be hitting National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation 2, Cousin Eddie's Island Adventure, and The Santa Claus. Both movies about equally good, I guess. I mean, they made. I'm sure they made about even when it came to the theater. Let's see here. So then, of course, we also have Jingle All the Way and Trading Places. Of course, you can't have a holiday season without a Christmas Story and Tokyo Godfathers, which is one we've been trying to get up here for a while. So I'm really happy with that. And thanks to Animazing Collection Incorporated for that, because they kind of helped us push that over the edge. And of course, next week we will be covering Ernest Saves Christmas.
Woo!
And Home Alone. So we got a lovely double feature next week to start us off on the holidays. So you should hopefully join us next time. But before we wrap, I'm going to give this over to our host, Dave, and get his scene and his wrap up.
Well, I guess my favorite scene is the whole scene with Bruce Lee and what is it? O'Hara.
Mhm.
I just thought that whole scene was kind of crazy, and the fact that he used anger, which obviously in every martial arts movie, it's never done with anger. And I think I like the snake scene too, and the fact that Jackie Chan had a small cameo role in this film. I mean, though you get him kind of Shaolin monk mustached, I guess this could work well for your mustache matinee.
Well, I tell you what, though, next time we do a martial arts mayhem, if we do, we got to make a point to get Jackie Chan in a front and center role for that, because he didn't get much one this go around.
Oh yeah, but in any case, I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, where we discuss various films, from silent films to current day in production projects, and I think we've had some fun this last year. We're into the Christmas hour. After that, it's the second half of our season, where we're just going to continue talking our ears to death. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I talk about 1970s. Wait, no. I don't talk about porn, but I might talk about films that probably escaped the edge of porn, and I may actually get into to reviewing a few porns down the road too. You never know.
Like the Dog the Bounty Hunter porn.
Life goals.
Oh, right. Fred Flintstone. And
well, if it exists.
Various different hustler films that are out there. But anyway, I do video pickup reviews of things that I picked up on my channel, but I also do occasional video reviews of my thoughts on different films, and it goes over a wide variety. I don't just do your average everyday film. I try to do something different every time that I go on, and okay, I've been lax in that area, but I should be taking up some more time to watch a few films. I got some in my head that I need to get out, and definitely check the channel out. Like, share, and subscribe to either or, and hopefully you check out the rest of my friends' channels as well. So stay tuned for some exciting Christmas holiday cheer. So everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night.